Hi everybody, good evening to everyone. So today we're going to discuss about how to build a website without any knowledge of programming or coding. Okay, so I'm Devashish Shah. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and also lead engineer at OE5 Soft Private Limited Pune. So in today's sessions, we'll discuss about different aspects of website development or how we can design a website. And for designing a website, what are the prerequisites required, or what types of software or which way we can proceed for if we want to develop a website. So whenever we're talking about the website development or any web development part, we normally assume that the persons who are going to develop the website, he or she is a basic knowledge or some better knowledge of programming or coding. But right now or nowadays, without knowing any depth knowledge of coding, we can also develop a website with different some basic idea of some tools or basic language. So in this today's sessions, I will discuss on some of the key topics on those and demonstrate how we can discuss or how we can create different side of websites and how we can test them. So let's start the sessions. So before going to session, we first need to understand what is actually web. So whenever we try to develop a website, we first need to understand what is web. Web is basically is a common name for, against the World Wide Web. It's basically whenever we access any websites or URL in the internet, we always start the address with www dot and then something the URL. So triple W means basically World Wide Web. So World Wide Web means that particular persons or that particular URL can be accessed from any part of the world by using the internet connectivity and the browser. So basically, it is a subset of the internet consists of the page that can be accessed by a web browser. So basic internet mainly used to transfer data from one part to another part. The introductions or inventions of internet is basically due to the share some informations or data between one computer to another computer. In the earlier days, when the internet is not exist or not invented, at that time we are normally share the data from one computer to another computer, but through different types of devices like floppy drive, uh, zip drive like this, and also some using the network connectivity or LAN or internet local area network. But whenever we need to transfer some data from one between two different computers where the physical distance of these two computers is very large, like say these two computer is residing in two different city or two different parts, locations of the same city. In that case, establish a local area network is too much costly and time consuming. And also transfer data from one computer to another computer by the conventional way, that is through any uh, software, any devices like floppy drive like this, etc. It can be done, but that also be done and it's time consuming. So in this concept of the internet is developed to share some data from one part to another part. So whenever we share some data between through internet, we need to perform or share that data in a specific format. So because internet can share any types of data, but for readability purpose or acceptance purpose, we are always follow the basic standard protocol or standard format which is shared by the internet. That is normally called as the page or HTML. So many people assume that the web is same as the internet, but actually it is not the same. Basically, internet is the main part, and the web is a subset of the internet, and use the term interchangeability. So, however, the internet actually refers to the global network of server that makes the information sharing that happens over the web possible. So, in very actual basic concept, internet is nothing but a global network which is established between different global servers across the world, and those data is transferred from one server to another server through different types of technology or protocols. So although the web does make a large portion of the internet, but they are not the same and not the same thing, because internet is always the main provider or barrier or carrier which basically transfer the data from one part to another part, whereas web is one type of medium through which we can share data from one part to another. So the next type is what is World Wide Web or WWW. So World Wide Web means triple W or W3 is a network of a online content. It is basically a network which is basically supply or provide us with different types of online content across the world. Maybe each and every contains have always having one URL or one key name, which is normally known as the URL. So that URL is common for each and every one. Maybe that if we access the URL from any part of the world, the content will be remain same. If the content has been changed, that means that content change will be applicable for each and every one. Normally, this content is formatted by in a pattern of HTML formatted, because HTML is the one of the basic pattern or format. We can say that format or communication medium through which internet, so that we can communicate to each other. And this and this content is normally accessed via HTTP. So we will discuss about HTML and HTTP later on this sessions. So the term refers to all the interlinked HTML page. So World Wide Web is basically a collections of multiple HTML page which are interlinked to each other. We can navigate from one page to another page, or here page is basically a file. So simply just a file. So we can open one file, and through that particular file we can navigate to another file and so on. This interlink is basically represents a one common name, and that common name is normally known as a www dot something. That will be access to the internet. If we have a separate set of interlinked HTML page or web, then those can be accessed through another URL. The World Wide Web was originally designed in 1991 by Tim Berners-Lee while he was a contractor at CERN Infosystem. The World Wide Web is most often referred the simply word as the web. So normally most of the times we are referred that the World Wide Web or W3 as a common term or simple term, the web. So just one thing, if you have any types of questions or queries, you just note down. We will discuss those questions later on of this session. Okay. So whenever we are trying to transfer some data from the web or through the web from one part to another part, we are normally follow some rules or protocol. Protocol is basically the rules. So suppose in case of us, whenever we travel through a road or we drive a car in a road, we are always follow the traffic rules, because without that rules we cannot drive a car, or there is some accidents can happen. So similarly, in case of internet also, whenever we try to transfer some data from one computer to another computer, or we can wanting to access some data from other computers, then we are normally follow this protocol called HTTP protocol, hypertext transfer protocol. So protocol is basically provides a rule or format which always maintain that either the required data or which data we are wanting to sending to the from one computer to another computer are in proper format, or other format, or data is properly designed or not, or like this. So hypertext transfer protocol or HTTP is basically the fundamental protocol used on or in internet in order to control data transfer from to one server to another server, or to and from to a hosting server in a communication with a web browser. So whenever a web browser communicates with a server, that web browser always asks and communicates with the server and requests from some data, and that particular server sending the data to the web browser. This entire communications always be maintained by this fundamental HTTP protocol. This is the base protocol or main protocol normally used in the web part. Without this protocol, most of the any transactions cannot happen. Yeah. Also, in spite of this protocol, we are also included some other protocols or rules for some security reason or some other reasons. But HTTP is one of the base protocol which always needs to be used in a web process or web site while we try to fetching the data from the server or sending data to the server. HTTP is basically the essential means of communications between web users and the servers. It means whenever we try to communicate between the server, and user, say as a person, when we are trying to access any website, we are the user, and that particular information stored in any computer, that computer is normally known as the web server. So any type of communications between these two endpoints, like users and a web server, it always HTTP is the one of the essential medium through which we can need to transfer data. And another part, most advanced or important parts of HTTP is that HTTP is basically a stateless protocol. HTTP is not inherent saving user settings, because stateless means HTTP does not contain or maintain any user machine information or user browser information to its server. So items like cookies are used to help the websites and serve to be remember what a user has done. So in some websites, whenever we operate that websites, and after a few days, when we try to reopen that website, that website is shown as that your last visit date like this and this. So this information is normally stored in a cookies in our local machine, so that at the next time, whenever we open that particular machine, that system website reads from that information from that particular file or a cookies file and display on the screen. But basically, HTTP protocol or HTTP does not accept any data from user machine. It basically is a carrier which receives some data from server, transfer to the browser, or send some data from website to another server. But it does not accept any data or pick up any data from the user machine without any programming concept or any other instructions. So whenever we are going to try start any website designing, we need to some basic concept. So what purpose or what are the basic or design we need to follow whenever we try to design a website? First, we need to decide for which purpose we don't want to design that website. Definitely, for any website, there is a basic purpose or definite purpose. For this purpose, we are trying to design a website. Either it's a some online information sharing purpose, or maybe some commercial purpose, like e-commerce sites, different types of e-commerce sites we have known through which we can communicate, or any other purpose. So first we need to decide for which purpose we need to design the website. And then the next point or next thing is simplicity. In earlier days, we think that if a website contains lots of images and lots of videos, then it will be better and attractive for the user. But in real life or in actuality, so if a particular website have hundreds of images and hundreds of videos, while we open the first page of the website, then it takes too much time to open in our user machines. And so in that case, the particular website performance is very slow. And we are, as a user beings, we are not preferred to operate any website which is taking too many times, like 1 or 2 minute time to load a single page, because a particular page maybe contains a large number of images or videos or any other information. So simplicity is one of the key topics in a website. So whenever we try to design a website, the simplicity or simple content representation one of the major points in the website designing concept. Second one is navigation. Navigation means, says if we are developing a website and that website always shares some information to the user, but we cannot put all the informations in a single page or in a single interface. So for that purpose, we need to segregate or separations for the different topics or different that enter contain different subtitle or different subtopics, and accordingly that we need to create different sections as per the subheading, and we need to establish a proper navigation process between these subheadings so that user can be able to move from one heading to another heading or one topic to another topic at any time. So this is one of the major part is in designing a website is the navigation. Fourth one is the content. Content means whenever we establish the navigations, after that we need to understand which types of content we need to represent in that particular website. Contents mainly can be three types of contents: either it's a static contents or text-based contents, or text and image, or some graphical or videographic contents. These types of contents we can represent in a website. And the last and the fifth one is the load time. This is the one of the key topics in a website design. As I said earlier also, whenever a website we want to design, we need to focus on loading time or performance. If I develop a website which has a get content or a very important or large number of contents with a get stuff, everything is good, but the loading time or performance, operational performance is very low. In that case, most of the user will not use that website. They will better navigate to other websites for their requirement. So load time is one of the major key pattern or point that whenever we design a website, we need to focus on this point, that the performance or content loading must be very fast. Whenever you click the page, at least within 10 to 15 seconds, the entire content of the website must be loaded in the browser properly. And the third and the last one is the device friendly or mobile friendly. Because earlier days, website is mainly developed for the desktop computers, because at that time, normally desktops or laptop computers are used majorly. So whenever a website developer start developing the website, they normally focus or design the website on basis on the concept of a desktop or laptop screen wise. But nowadays, since there is a different types of device has been introduced, and we are heavily used in like mobile devices, iPad, notebook, tablet, different types. So it is very important that that our users or our targeted users maybe not opening the website from the laptop or desktop computers always. Maybe they try to open the website from other devices like mobiles, iPad, tab, etc. So the content needs to be displayed properly in other devices. The major problem is that in other devices like mobile, iPad, or tab, the device size and the resolutions always differ from the desktop or computer. So if we design a website in concept of a desktop, and in that case, the website is open in a mobile device, which is say 6 inches screen. In that case, most of the content is overlapped to each other. So it needs to be properly tested that during the development, if we want that this mobile site must be used by the other any user from in any devices, then we need to take care of that functionality also. So these are the some of the major key aspects which we need to maintain or focus while we are going to design a particular website. So the next topic is the server software program. Server software program is basically means while we are trying to develop a website, we require some software, but those software maybe does not developed by us, but while we are trying to host a website or use a website, that particular software required to run the website. So there are one types of software we normally call, that is a server software, because whenever suppose we have designed a website and create the website, after that we need to host the website so that everybody can access. Because if the website is designed in my laptop or my computer, then as a user only I'm able to access that website. But if I want that everybody in the world can access that website, then I need to uh, upload those files or website details in a common server or public server from where everybody can access that website by using a URL or website address. So in that case, when we are trying to upload any our websites in a particular server, that particular server always maintain or run use some software which is normally known as a server software or programs. So in normal cases, on a hardware side, a web server or a server software is a computer that stores web server software and a website components file. So whatever files we have designed for our website, if we want, we upload those files in this particular server or in a particular domain. That particular server contains all the related software to access the file and operate on that file. So those are software known as the server software. Normally, website file means HTML documents, some images, CSS style sheets, and some JavaScript files if required. And also, it requires some video files if we want to upload or to use some video files in that website. So these are the basic types of files. So which are normally accessible or open by any operating systems, either Windows, Linux, Mac, any operating system by default, because these types of files are initially supported by all types of operating systems. A web server basically connects to the internet and supports physical data interchange with other devices connected to the web. Basically, it means whenever we upload the data in the website, that server always connected with internet, because we don't know when and how for where any user try to access that particular data. So a web server always needs to connect it to the internet. If any time due to any reason, either technical problem or due to any reason, if that particular web server does not connect it to the internet, in that case, normally we found a message that server not found or server is breakdown. So sometimes we heard from the news that this particular server, Yahoo server has been breakdown or down or not responding. That means that particular server related to which Yahoo or Google is used, that server does not have any internet connectivity due to any technical reasons. On the other software side, a web server includes several parts of the control how web user access hosted file. This is basically for the security reasons, that a server always maintains some security that anybody, some files may be some secured files. So as for example, suppose we are always using some banking transactions or some e-portal transactions through internet like Flipkart, Amazon, like this. So if I have not logged, if I open a Flipkart or Amazon website and I found some product information or product which I want to buy or purchase, but without logged in, I cannot purchase that site. I can browse or search the product. I can select the product, but if when I click on the buy options or purchase options, I need to log in the system, because at the time of logged in, that particular server always ask some my personal information like name, address, phone number for some communications information or contact information to authenticate myself that yes, if I that person is the physical valid persons and we can finalize that deal with him or her. So these types of security or access point can be controlled by the server software. So overall, basically all the server software, it can be termed as the HTTP server software, HTTP server in a basic point, because whenever we use any web server, that particular web server always follow the HTTP protocol. So we can term that this server is known as the HTTP server also. So this is a one symbolic representation or graphical representation between a communication between server software and the user machine. In this image, the browser is basically represents the user's computer. So as a user, whenever we open a browser and access any type any URL, at that time we send a request to the server, web server of that particular URL. So say I have opened a browser and type google.com or yahoo.com like this, simple site. So at that time, the browser send a request to the Google server or Yahoo server that this we require some information or we require information regarding this URL in this browser. So after receiving that information, web server validate that it is a valid response request or not, and accordingly that request it decide which files it needs to send back to the browser. Maybe in Yahoo or Google server there are thousands or 1,000 or 10,000 or 1 lakh, so a large number of files has been stored for different purposes. But whenever we click on the google.com or yahoo.com at that time, that means that particular URL represents one single file, not the 1,000 or 1 lakh files. Out of 1,000 or all the files, it represents a one single file. So as per the URL we type, according that web server identifies that yeah, that particular browser requires this particular file only. So accordingly that server send that particular file informations or file details to that particular browser. Similarly, at the same time, if I open another browser or another tab on the browser and type the same URL with some other information, at that time also it will send a different information, because both if the request type is same change. Suppose I have sent yahoo www.yahoo.com and the second time I've sent www.yahoo.com/clickit. That means in the second time I required information from Yahoo server, but at the first time I didn't mention anything. So according to that, it decided as per the URL, it decided which files information is required to send back to the user, and accordingly web server perform this. This entire mechanism is basically done by the server software program. So normally a static web server always consists of a hardware, which is basically the HTTP server. We are normally called this static because the server sends its hosted file as it is to your browser. So the static means nobody can change the data as a from the whatever the data we have uploaded in the server, the same data is returned back to the user machine, and user cannot change the data. User can just only view the data, and after viewing again can required or ask for the another sets of data. But as a user, we cannot change those data because those sites are the static. If we want to provide some information or some accessibility access that user can make the changes on those data, then in that case those websites cannot be static. We are calling that those websites as a dynamic website. And for that purpose, for static website development, we does not require any programming knowledge, because we have different tools, online tools or some online through which we can develop the static website. But definitely, if we want to or target to create a dynamic website where some information sent from the server, as a user I receive the information, and after receiving, if I decided I want to change some data on those informations, I change and then again resend to server, so that server can update his or her own file. So the next time whenever any user asks for data, it will return me the updated data. In those cases, we definitely require some programming knowledge of coding work on those parts. So for dynamic website, definitely we require coding or programming, but for static, we definitely today it is so much developed that it does not require too much of coding. So a dynamic web server consists of static web server plus extra software, mostly as an application server and database, which is basically used to upgrade database or update database. So before going to directly how we can develop a data website, first we decide or understanding the concept of web domain. Web domain is basically means when we develop or design a website, after designing a website, we need to upload those website files in a web server, so that those files can be readily easily accessible by each and every one from across the any location. Now, suppose I have designed a website and I have hundred of files, different types of files, and I have uploaded those files in a web server. But now, as a third, as a unknown user or any other person, how I can inform them if they access this URL or this address, if they want to access those files, how they can open. So whenever we upload any particular files in the web server always provide us a URL or address. Just like suppose if I want to go from any of my friend's house, so I first ask him or her about the address of our house, and according to address, I'll reach the home in their home. So similarly, in this concept also, whenever we upload any data in a web server, we always require address of that file location so that anybody can access that file using that address. That address is basically known as a web URL. So whenever we upload any file, that address is always part of a web domain. So a domain name is a web address consisting of website name and a domain name extension. Domain name extension means whenever we create a website address, that website address can be categorized because each and every website address name must be unique, because across the world, if there are two different websites and two different websites have two same name, then there will be a confusion or conflict. So always in case of domain name, the website name must be unique. So that's why we are providing website name or categorize website name in two parts. One is the website name or URL address, and the second part is the extension name or the category. Extension name can be defined on basis of the category of website or the purpose of a website. Like if we are trying to create any commercial website, then the extension will be .com. If we are trying to create any educational website, then that extension will be edu, like this. So this category can be defined by the web server provider or web server. When we try to upload the file, we need to mention that which type of extension we require or what is the purpose of the website. So accordingly, the extension is defined. So now is done, and the next first part, that is the website name or website address, is basically upon us. We need to provide a website name as we want, and the website name can contain letter, numbers, hyphen, everything is available, can be available. Just like a physical address help people find a specific place, the purpose of a domain is to help visitors to find a website. So without domain names, user can only access website using internet protocol address. But the question is that if we does not provide any domain name or website address, then is it not possible to access that information? Yeah, definitely possible. But in that case, we need to maintain the IP addresses, because each and every computer have their own IP addresses, internet protocol addresses. So whenever we upload any file to any particular server, that server is also have an IP address. So in that case, we need to remember IP address of that server like this. So 192, and IP address have its own pattern. There is a 4 types of pattern, and according to that pattern, we need to mention the number. But remembering these types of number, in spite of any name, it is much tough for us, because yahoo.com, I know that yahoo.com is a website address, but what is the IP address of yahoo.com? We don't know, because we doesn't need to remember, because maybe if we don't have the name, then in that case we used to the IP address. But suppose today the one yahoo.com Yahoo server having one IP, but tomorrow due to some technical reasons they change their server or change their server, and at that time they have their IP address also been changed. So in that case, they have to inform each and every user of Yahoo that our IP address has been changed, so you have to access the base through this URL. So that is a hectic work. So that's why you always provide a domain name, so that that name can is a static provided by the user or company. Behind that name, maybe the IP address there behind the name, there definitely there is an IP address exists, but that IP address is not required. If Yahoo Corporation changed the IP name or the server IP, that does not bother. We as a user does not bother because we are normally access with the web domain name. So similarly, this is a one example of the web domain web address, that is http://www.example.com. So out of these example, this part is the name of the website which is provided by the user or the owner of the website, and the last part after the dot sign, that is the com, this is the extension. So .com means identify that this is a commercial site, and similarly there is different types of site extension is available. So combinedly example.com, this entire part is basically known as a domain name. So this is basically the domain name, and www is basically known as a subdomain, and HTTP is basically the prefix. So this, in combining this entire part, it is known as a web domain URL. So whenever we type this URL in any browser, that particular and press enter, then automatically it communicates with that particular domain server and access that particular URL or related files. So whenever we're trying to develop a website, we need to know some basic idea of HTML. Yeah, the full form of HTML is hypertext markup language, but in that case, everyone normally consider that HTML is a programming language, but basically HTML is not a proper programming language. Definitely, the name of this HTML is hypertext markup language, and it's quite we can perform programming or coding through HTML, but it's basically some tag-based language or syntaxes. They're just like DOS, because nowadays most of the persons, we are not using the DOS operating system, but at the beginning, whenever we start the computing, learn computer, at that time we need to learn some DOS commands. So DOS is also there is also different types of command, and according each and every command perform a specific task. Like dir basically provides a list. So each and every command is performing a specific task. Similarly, HTML basically contains some tags, or say we can say the command. Each and every command have a specific task, and accordingly we can use. For this, for using the HTML, we does not require to know any knowledge about the programming, because it's a simply command based. If we remember that, know that, yeah, this is the command, and according to that command we can directly use the part. So hypertext markup language is a basically major markup language used to display web pages on the internet. Say there is a term called markup. Markup is basically means this is not a language, but markup languages act as a language. In the other word, web pages are basically composed of HTML, which is used to display text, images, and other any resources through a web browser. Because what are the web browser we have used, like IE, Edge, Chrome, Mozilla, Safari? Every web browser normally reads or understand the language or this HTML language. So whenever we try to open any file as the website or any web files, that we always need to write down that or content of that particular file in a HTML language. All HTML is basically the plain text, and there is nothing is compilations or any programming. What we are written in the text file at the time of typing or creating that file, the same thing is always open in the browser also. The file extension of the HTML is normally either .html or .html. We can use any one of these file extension. So if we open any particular site, suppose, yeah. So this is a simple site of msn.com, which we have already, I have opened. So this is a URL. So in this part, msn is the file at URL name. This is the commercial site, and this is the double. So there are different types of content is present. So if we each and every browser in the currently in operating system always have a inspect element through which we can check the HTML language. So whenever if we click on anything, then that particular content can be available. So whatever the user has been written there, each and every content as it is displayed here. So we can say that this is not a secure because same information or whatever as a programmer or as a designer, what I have typed here, already the same thing is also displayed with the user. But yeah, definitely it's secure because as a user, I cannot change anything. I can only view the data here. And so that's why the same data which as a website designer or at the time of designing website we had entered, the same information is also visible in the website through the browser also. So while developing a website, we first understand the concept of hyperlink. Hyperlink is basically a link which is mainly used to navigate from one HTML document to another HTML document. So that two documents can be two different files or can be a different part of the same file. So we can use the hyperlink to navigate from one part to another part. So hyperlink is basically an element in an HTML document that links to either another portion of document or to another document altogether. For web pages, hyperlinks are usually colored purple or blue and are sometimes underlined. So normally, if any web pages we find any text with a blue color or hyper or underline color, and if I hover the mouse on that link, then if the mouse arrow has been changed to a hand symbol or cursor symbol, that means it's a hyperlink. It's a clickability. So click means some other content is hidden on that particular link. If we click on the link, then it will automatically send a request, and that particular content will open in the browser. A hyperlink can be thought as an interface that links a source to a target. Clicking on a hyperlink at the source will navigate to the target. Hyperlink can assume any of the following appearances, like text. We can create a hyperlink as a text. Also, image can be a hyperlink. If we click on the image, then the related content will be open like this. URLs, we can also click on a URL that after click on the URL, that particular link will open. And like controls, like different types of buttons or other controls, like button. If we there is a button on click on that particular button, that particular link will open like this. So before going to see how we can design a page using HTML, we first understand the HTML tag. HTML tag is basically nothing but the commands, just like a command. As I said earlier also, HTML is basically defined by some specific commands, and each and every command has a specific task or specific type of task. So those commands are known as a tag. So HTML tag is commonly defined as a set of characters consisting of formatted command for a web page. At the core of HTML, tags provide the directions of receipt or directions or receipts for the visual content that one sees on the web. HTML tags have always been important in the history of web design because without this, we cannot design HTML content. Now we will discuss some of the basic tag of HTML. Like whenever we are trying to create any HTML file, the content of the HTML file always starts with the HTML tag. HTML tag itself is a tag. So HTML is basically itself has a tag name called HTML, which identified that this file is the HTML file. So if any particular file contain or file starts with the HTML tag, that in that case browser identifies or understand that this file is basically the HTML file, and so we need to display the content as per that command given inside the command inside that particular file. So according as per the HTML tag, it will identify a browser identify that this file is the HTML files or not. HTML file tag is the container of all other HTML elements except for doc type tag. So basically all other tags or commands which we require to enter that those need to be written down within the HTML tag. After HTML tag, we need to another important tag called header tag. Header tag is basically defined to define the header of the website. Header means whenever we open any website page in a browser, that browser have a title bar, blue title ribbon bar at the top. So if we want to display any text or heading or informations in that particular bar, in that case, we need to use the header tag. So what are the information we have written there? Those information will be displayed in the header tag, in the header section of the browser. A header element typically contains one or more heading elements, logo or icons, etc., and auto save information, etc. We can have several header elements in one HTML document. However, header can be placed within the footer or address or any other header. So let's check some of the example. Close it. So here I am basically using a one online editor, which is mainly used for creating some HTML document online format. So I think my screen is visible. This code is readable to all of you. So here, suppose I have removed all the things initially, and I have typed. So whenever we are trying to create any HTML page, that we need to create a HTML tag first. So this is the HTML tag, and most of the HTML tag has the opening and closing. For opening part, we write down to within the angular brackets, and for closing, we need to write down like this within the angular bracket with backslash HTML. Okay. Now, each and every HTML document or website always divided in two sections. One is heading section, another is body section. Heading section means, say this is this part, this title bar part is normally known as the heading part, and the rest part, which is displayed in the browser section, this is known as the body part. So if we want to display any information in a header part, head part, so we need to start, and suppose I have written down demo page. I have written down, say, one heading content, that demo page. And if I run, click on there, so that information will be displayed here. Right now, it will not display here because I am using a TypeScript editor. So, but if I copy this content and open Notepad on this and paste the same content and save the file, and go to the, so there is a one HTML page already open, and I click on open. Okay. Similarly, if we're trying to create a body of the HTML, and if we type anything, language, and if we click, so it will appear here. Now, if we wanting to display this message as a heading, then we have a different tag for that. So H1. H1 is basically is a heading tag. So if we're using the H1, then the content has been changed to the heading type line. So in this way, we can use this content. H1, this heading tab has up to level 6. That is, we can change this to level 6 like H1, H2, H3, H3, 4, 5, 6. So if we change this in HTML format, or suppose I'll copy this content and again paste this and change it to HTML2. So it, in case of Whenever the increase the number, it will reducing the size of the content. Okay, so this is the basic concept of heading tag. Similarly, we have a body tag, which we have used in which we can create headings, paragraphs, images, hyperlink, etc. Like if we want to place this heading in a center position, then we can use center, and also we need to mention the closer. So the page has been container will be center of the page. Similarly, if we want to say I'll using normal content, B, there is a B tag or that is a bold tag. So this can be a bold. With a normal text, we also make a bold attribute by using the B tag. Similarly, there is a underline tag for underline that is called U. It will display the underline. Also, we can use the same this tags also within the heading tag on heading tag also similarly. So this is a sample examples of heading. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Also, I am audible.
Yeah, you're audible. You can hear me, right? Hello. Hello.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you can hear me.
There's some error message. Okay. Fine. So let's continue. So similarly, just like HTML, there is another part of the website concept that is called a styling or CSS. Styling or CSS is basically used for the beautification or styling purpose of the website. Normally, HTML creates a contents in a normal static constants, but if we want to apply some designing or style or some colored effects, something like that, then we need to use the styles or CSS. CSS is basically stands for the cascading style sheets or style sheets. This is a normal some syntaxes which is mainly used to for some beautifications or effect coloring or graphical effects in the content. CSS describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper, or in media. CSS saves a lot of work. It can control the layout of multiple web pages at all once. So through CSS, we can create a common style design pattern, and we can apply the same design pattern to each and every page. Just like suppose in Microsoft Word, we have a header and footer. So if we want a multiple page document, and if we want to put some static content or some heading in each and of each and on top of the each and every page, then in the case of Microsoft Word, we are normally place that content in the header part, so that whenever a new page has been added, that part automatically copied in that part. We does not need to adjust the content automatically. That automatically maintained by the Microsoft Word. This is just like that. We can create a design template like that, header or footer or common design pattern, and we can apply that CSS part to each and every web pages in our site, so that the same content or same design effect can be applicable to each and everywhere. Also, we can upload the external style sheet file, which is the for which we have the external extension is .css. So in case of CSS, custom style sheet is basically used to format the layout of the web page. In CSS, we can control the color, font, size of text, spacing between the element, how element are positioned or laid out, what will be the background images or background color. This can be set by the using the CSS. CSS can be added in the HTML document by three different ways. One is inline. Inline means basically embedded within the HTML elements. Another is internal. Those can be used by using the style tag in the header section. And another is external. In case of external, we are creating the same command in external file and then attach that particular file in the HTML document. So this is one example of a CSS based website. Suppose we are trying to create a website which has different types of styles. So we have a common type of heading. Now we have a different links like style sheet 1, style sheet 2, style sheet 3, 4, and no style sheet. And also there is a on click on this each and every link, the content related to these links will be displayed in this section. Okay, and this part is a common. This is a static part and always displayed like. So this is the one type of design which we can design with one set of CSS. Similarly, with the same content, by changing the CSS or designing CSS style, we can change the design looks of the page in different ways. So in both the cases, content is remains same. Both the things, links, everything is remains same, but the looks is different because we have changed the style. So first one, in the case of first one, the links are in the left side, color is green, etc. But in the next slide, color is quite reddish. So in links are in the right side, and the content area is much more larger, and the sidebar is in the footer area on the bottom of the page. So in this way, using the CSS, we can change the design or looks of the page instantly by changing the CSS. For that part, we does not make the need to change the HTML content. We just only need to change the styles. So we'll check some examples here. So here, suppose if we want to use the color of this heading, then we can create the style property here, and you say not just color, yeah. So color, if we use the font size, suppose I want to increase the size of this text in spite of using the H2, I am wanting to increase the font size. So this is, or you can provide say, like this. Like this. So in this way, we can use, so we can create the different look, change the looks of the file, like. Okay. So the another part of the website is the concept of JavaScript. JavaScript is basically a scripting language, which mainly you require when we try to create any dynamic websites where end user can able to change the content of the website. So JavaScript is basically the scripting language which enables some create dynamicity in the updating content, control multimedia, or animate images, and etc. So if we require to develop a static website, then we just not require to create any JavaScript files or JavaScript code. But yeah, definitely, if we want to create some dynamic sites where dynamic content updation require a control then we require to use the JavaScript. So it basically stored values in a variables or some medium, and according to that, those values can be passed to the users, and after updating those values, it returns back to the server to update the content. So running code in response to certain events occurring on a web page. We use a click event on the page to detect when the button is clicked and then run the code to update the text level. Okay, so through JavaScript, we can perform different types of work, but definitely those work can always depends upon the requirement or not. Any specific work that these types of work needs to be done by the JavaScript as per the custom requirement or the requirement of the website. We can perform the activity or need to write down the code. So whenever we are trying to create any website, as we have said earlier also, for developing a static website, it does not require any programming knowledge. Because whenever we try to develop a static website, nowadays there are several tools available on internet. Some of the tools are free, some of the tools are paid, but most of the tools are free tools are very well and good enough to develop a website. So some of the tools is the, although there are a lot of design options available for web designer, there are the best, some best designing tools. One of the best designing tools is WordPress. It basically provides everything which contains our website hosting, maintenance, and along with pages, creations, navigations, everything can be done but through a website. WordPress. For knowing the way WordPress, it does not require to know anything about WordPress. Although WordPress is a language, we can develop something or different language, but without knowing anything in a website, WordPress, we can follow the widgets or website or WordPress portal, and we can design our own website. For that, we just only need to type the contents in the required areas. Another is the InVision Studio. It is also a good website designing tool through which we can design the website. Photoshop is another tool through which we can develop the websites. Adobe Dreamweaver, it is a very popular tool for regarding the developing any website related or web-based development like website or static or dynamic both. And another one is Google Web Designer. Google Web Designer is one of the latest tools developed by Google to design some websites or web pages. It's totally free, and we can directly download and install the Google Web Designer in our computer or laptop, and we can use these tools